I am standing right here on my street. Why are you harassing me?
Sir, remain calm. We just need to ask you a few questions about the vehicle.
Phone down. I said, put the phone down. Now. The command cut through the quiet evening like a blade. A black man stood alone beneath a streetlight in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, his phone still in his hand, the glow of the screen lighting up his face. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't breaking any law. He was simply waiting for a ride after his car broke down a few minutes earlier. But to the police officer stepping out of the patrol car, none of that mattered. In his eyes, the scene already looked wrong. This is the story of how a single stop made without a crime, without evidence, and without cause spiraled into a federal civil rights case that would end with a $4.5 million judgment against a city and its taxpayers. Before we go any further, pause for just a second. Type the name of your city or country in the comments. Stories like this are being watched all over the world. And tonight's story is one that connects us all. It was a warm evening. The kind where the sky fades slowly from orange to deep blue, and the streets are calm and nearly empty. The neighborhood was known for its large homes, trimmed lawns, and silence after dark. People here weren't used to seeing strangers standing on sidewalks, and that alone was enough to draw attention. The officer had already decided something was wrong before a single word was spoken. In that moment, the body camera was already recording, capturing not just what was said but the assumption that would change everything. What began as a simple wait for a ride was about to become a lesson in power, prejudice, and consequences. And it all started with one command that never should have been given. The man standing under that streetlight was not a suspect. His name was Marcus Reynolds. And long before that night, he had dedicated his life to enforcing the very laws that were about to be used against him. Marcus was a federal agent, someone trained to read situations carefully, to remain calm under pressure, and to understand exactly how police encounters are supposed to work. He had spent years building cases, protecting civil rights, and holding criminals accountable, often at great personal cost. That evening, Marcus wasn't on duty. He wasn't wearing a badge or a suit. He was just a man trying to get home after another exhausting day of work. Earlier that night, his car, a well-maintained but aging sedan, had suddenly overheated while he was driving through the neighborhood. Warning lights flashed. The engine sputtered, and within moments, he had no choice but to pull over before the damage became permanent. Marcus did everything right. He secured the vehicle, locked the doors, and walked to a well-lit area where he could be seen clearly. He opened a ride-share app on his phone and requested a ride. Watching the screen confirmed that a driver was on the way. 12 minutes. That was all he needed. As he waited, Marcus stood calmly, hands visible, scanning the quiet street. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't afraid. He had no reason to be. He had no idea that to someone watching from a patrol car, his calm confidence wouldn't look normal. It would look suspicious. And that misunderstanding was about to turn an ordinary inconvenience into a life-changing confrontation. A few houses down the street, a marked patrol car rolled slowly through the neighborhood. Behind the wheel was Officer Brian Keller, a 9-year veteran of the department. Keller had built his reputation on being alert, aggressive, and suspicious of anything that didn't fit his idea of normal. To his supervisors, he was proactive. To some of his colleagues, he was unpredictable. As Keller scanned the quiet street, his attention locked onto one thing: a man standing alone under a streetlight. Keller slowed the car, his eyes narrowing as he watched Marcus check his phone. In his mind, the pieces didn't add up. This neighborhood was quiet, wealthy, predictable. people who lived here didn't stand on sidewalks at night. And in Keller's thinking, this man didn't belong. He didn't consider the possibility of a broken-down car. He didn't think about rideshare apps or innocent explanations. His brain jumped straight to suspicion. Scouting houses. He muttered to himself. Without any report, without a description, and without a single call for service. Keller reached up and activated his body camera. A small red light blinked on recording every assumption he was about to make. The patrol car slowed to a crawl. Tires barely rolling as Keller watched Marcus from behind the windshield. He didn't see a citizen. He didn't see a stranded driver. He saw a problem that needed to be confronted. And with that decision, Keller turned the wheel toward the curb, convinced that he was about to prevent a crime when in reality, he was about to create one. The patrol car rolled to a stop just a few feet from the curb. Before Marcus could even turn fully toward the sound of the engine, the door swung open. Phone down. Officer Keller ordered sharply. His voice wasn't calm. It wasn't curious. It carried the tone of command like a decision had already been made. Marcus immediately lowered his phone and kept his hands visible, just as he had been trained to do. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. "I'm waiting for a ride," he said evenly. "My car broke down the street. I can show you the app." Keller didn't look at the phone. "I don't care about your app," he replied. "You don't live here." Those words landed heavy. They weren't a question. They weren't a concern for safety. They were a judgment. Marcus stayed composed. He pointed calmly toward the dark outline of his disabled car further down the road, explaining again that he had just pulled over minutes earlier and was waiting for transportation. Keller stepped closer, close enough to invade Marcus's personal space. "People don't just stand around here at night," Keller said. "We've had issues with people casing houses." There was no report, no call, no description. Marcus asked the question that would later become central to the lawsuit. "Officer, am I being detained?" Keller didn't answer. Instead, he stared at Marcus, hands resting near his duty belt, body angled forward in a posture of control. In that moment, the stop crossed a line, because without a crime, without reasonable suspicion, and without explanation, this was no longer a conversation. It was the beginning of an unlawful detention captured frame by frame on a body camera that never blinked. Marcus could feel the situation tightening. He had answered every question calmly. He had followed every instruction. And yet, nothing he said seemed to matter. Trying once more to de-escalate, Marcus slowly lifted his phone, angling the screen so Keller could clearly see it. The rideshare app was open. A car icon crept closer on the map. Estimated arrival time 4 minutes. "I'm not doing anything illegal," Marcus said. "My ride is almost here." Keller didn't glance at the screen. Instead, he shook his head. "I don't believe you," he said flatly. Those 4 words carried enormous weight, because at that moment, Keller wasn't investigating facts. He was rejecting them. He took another step forward, forcing Marcus to shift slightly to maintain space. The move was subtle, but intentional, an intimidation tactic designed to assert dominance. "You fit the description," Keller added. What description, Marcus asked. Keller didn't answer. There was no active suspect, no radio call, no bulletin. Marcus felt a flash of anger, but he controlled it. He knew exactly how quickly police encounters could spiral when emotions took over. "Officer," he said carefully, "I'm happy to show my ID if needed, but I've done nothing wrong." Keller's expression hardened. In his mind, Marcus's calm confidence wasn't cooperation, it was defiance. And instead of slowing the situation down, Keller decided to take control. The body camera captured it all. The refusal to look at evidence, the absence of probable cause, the moment when suspicion replaced the law. And what Keller did next would push the encounter past the point of no return. The tension in the air snapped without warning. Without explaining why, Officer Keller suddenly reached out and grabbed Marcus by the wrist. There was no announcement of detention, no warning, no lawful reason. Marcus reacted instinctively. "Don't touch me," he said firmly, pulling his arm back. That single, natural reaction was all Keller needed. "Stop resisting," Keller shouted. The words rang out down the quiet street, loud enough to echo off the houses that had remained dark and silent just moments earlier. In one sharp movement, Keller spun Marcus around and slammed him chest first against the brick wall of the nearest property. The impact knocked the air from his lungs as cold masonry pressed against his face. "Hands behind your back." Now, Marcus knew better than to fight. He complied, even as confusion and disbelief surged through him. This wasn't an arrest based on evidence. This was an arrest based on pride. Metal cuffs snapped shut around his wrists tight, far tighter than necessary. The pressure bit into his skin immediately. Marcus grimaced but stayed silent. He knew every word, every movement. Every second was being recorded. He focused on breathing, on staying calm, on surviving the moment. Keller patted him down aggressively, searching for weapons that weren't there. To anyone watching from a distance, the scene was unmistakable. A black man in handcuffs, pinned against a wall by a uniformed officer. But what the camera captured told a different story. It showed the exact moment when a baseless stop turned into an unlawful arrest, and the instant when Officer Keller crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. With Marcus still pressed against the wall, Officer Keller reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. Keller expected to see a driver's license, maybe a local address he could question, something that would confirm the story he had already written in his head. Instead, when he flipped the wallet open, the streetlight reflected off something metallic. For a brief second, Keller didn't understand what he was looking at. Then he saw it. A federal badge, clean, official, unmistakable. Next to it, a laminated identification card bearing the seal of the United States government. Federal agent. Time seemed to slow. The noise of the street faded. The radio crackle from the patrol car disappeared into the background. Keller stared at the badge, his jaw tightening as the realization hit him all at once. The man he had just shoved into a wall wasn't a criminal. He wasn't casing houses. He wasn't lying. He was a federal agent, someone who understood the law as well as, if not better than, Keller himself. Marcus spoke calmly, his voice steady despite the cuffs biting into his wrists. "You're making a mistake," he said. "I'm a federal agent." This was the moment everything could have been fixed. A simple apology, the handcuffs removed, the encounter quietly ended. But instead of backing down, Keller made a choice, one driven by embarrassment and pride. And that choice would turn a bad stop into a catastrophic one. Officer Keller closed the wallet slowly and slipped it into his own pocket. For a moment, Marcus waited, expecting the cuffs to come off, expecting an apology, expecting the situation to finally de-escalate. None of that happened. Instead, Keller leaned in close, his voice low and sharp. "Your badge doesn't give you special treatment," he said. "You still don't belong here." Those words sealed it. In that instant, Keller wasn't enforcing the law anymore. He was protecting himself. He grabbed Marcus by the arm and pulled him away from the wall, ignoring the pain caused by the tight handcuffs. Marcus's phone slipped from his pocket and hit the pavement. skidding across the sidewalk before coming to rest near the curb. Keller didn't stop. He opened the rear door of the patrol car and shoved Marcus inside. The hard plastic seat was cramped, forcing Marcus to twist his long frame just to fit. The door slammed shut with a heavy thud. Inside the car, the world went quiet. Marcus sat there, wrists burning, staring straight ahead as the reality set in. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was an abuse of power, one that had just been recorded in its entirety. Keller climbed into the driver's seat and sat still for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. His breathing was heavy. His pride was wounded. Then he put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb, leaving Marcus's phone behind on the ground. As the patrol car disappeared down the street, the body camera continued to record, carrying the evidence of a choice that would soon cost a city millions. The patrol car rolled into the police station's secured garage and came to a stop. Officer Keller stepped out first, his movements stiff, his jaw clenched. He opened the back door and ordered Marcus out, gripping his arm tightly as he escorted him through the heavy steel doors and into the brightly lit booking area. Inside, the station buzzed with routine activity. Officers typed reports. Phones rang. Laughter drifted from a nearby desk, and then it stopped. A supervising sergeant looked up and froze. His eyes locked onto Marcus's face, then dropped to the handcuffs still binding his wrists. The color drained from the sergeant's face as recognition hit him. "Is that Agent Reynolds?" he asked sharply. The room went silent. Every head turned. Keller tried to explain, his words stumbling over each other. He mentioned suspicious behavior. He muttered something about resisting. The sergeant didn't let him finish. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded. The station captain emerged from his office, drawn by the sudden tension. One look at the scene was all it took. A handcuffed federal agent standing in the middle of the precinct was a nightmare scenario, and everyone in the room knew it. The captain's voice was calm, but deadly serious. "Take those cuffs off. Now." Keller hesitated for just a second too long, then fumbled for his keys. As the cuffs finally clicked open, the balance of power shifted completely. Marcus rolled his wrists slowly, red marks circling his skin. He looked directly at the captain. "I want the body camera footage preserved immediately," he said. And in that moment, the case stopped being about a street stop. It became a federal problem. Marcus was released that night without a single charge. Another officer drove him back to the scene so he could retrieve his phone and arrange a tow for his disabled car. The street was just as quiet as before. The houses unchanged. The streetlights still glowing, almost as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Within days, Marcus contacted a civil rights attorney with extensive experience in police misconduct cases. Together, they reviewed the body camera footage frame by frame. What they saw was devastating. There was no crime, no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause. Just assumptions, commands, escalation, and force. A federal lawsuit was filed against the city and Officer Keller personally, alleging false arrest, excessive force, and violation of constitutional rights. The filing was precise, methodical, and backed by one thing departments fear most: clear video evidence. City attorneys initially tried to defend the stop. They argued officer safety. They claimed Keller was investigating suspicious behavior. Then the footage was released. The video spread rapidly online. News outlets picked it up within hours. Millions of viewers watched the same moments over and over the ignored phone screen. The unanswered question about detention. The sudden grab. The cuffs. Public reaction was immediate and fierce. What Keller thought would stay contained inside a patrol car had now become a national conversation about race, power, and accountability. And the city realized it wasn't just facing a lawsuit, it was facing a reckoning. The trial unfolded under intense public scrutiny. Jurors filed into the courtroom knowing this case was bigger than a single arrest. At its center was one question: did an officer abuse his power based on prejudice rather than law? Marcus took the stand first. He spoke calmly, deliberately, describing the confusion, the humiliation, and the fear of being treated like a criminal for simply standing on a sidewalk. He explained that, despite his training and experience, nothing could prepare him for how quickly the situation escalated and how powerless he felt once the handcuffs snapped shut. Then the video was played. The courtroom went silent. Jurors watched Officer Keller ignore the rideshare app. They watched him refuse to answer whether Marcus was being detained. They saw the sudden grab, the shove into the wall, the tight cuffs. The footage didn't need commentary. It spoke for itself. When Keller took the stand, his testimony unraveled quickly. He struggled to explain why he never looked at the phone. He couldn't identify any real suspect description. And when asked why he continued the arrest after discovering Marcus was a federal agent, his answers grew vague and defensive. The jury noticed. By the time closing arguments ended, the narrative was clear. This wasn't a mistake made in confusion. It was a decision made in seconds that violated the Constitution. And now, the jury was ready to decide the cost of that decision. The jury did not deliberate for long. When they returned to the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Everyone stood as the verdict was read. They found in favor of Marcus Reynolds on all counts: false arrest, excessive force, violation of civil rights. Then came the number: $4.5 million. A collective gasp filled the room. The award included compensation for what Marcus endured and a substantial amount of punitive damages meant to send a message far beyond this single case. This wasn't just about money. It was about accountability. The city had no choice but to pay. Within weeks, Officer Keller was terminated from the department. His badge was taken. His career in law enforcement was over. Internal reviews followed, and the department quietly updated its training policies, making the body camera footage from this case mandatory viewing for new recruits. Marcus used a portion of the settlement to support legal defense organizations that help people who don't have federal badges. Lawyers, or public attention, people who might never get justice otherwise. The street where it all happened looks the same today. The houses are still immaculate. The lawns are still green. But something invisible changed. Officers patrolling that area now think twice before making assumptions. They pause. They ask questions. They listen. Because this case proved something undeniable. Standing on a sidewalk is not a crime. Waiting for a ride is not suspicious. And prejudice, when paired with authority, comes with a very real price: $4.5 million. But more importantly, a permanent reminder that power must be guided by law, not fear, and that sometimes the most expensive mistakes begin with a single, unjustified command. And that pause, that moment of thinking before acting, might be worth more than all the money in the world.